The red warning on my phone did not blink. It stayed solid, like an open wound that refused to close. Past due. Final notice. My hands shook as I read the numbers again. The debt had my mother's name, but my mother had been dead for 3 years. The lender line said Eastbrook Private Finance. That company had vanished when I was 16. I had watched it fold, and I had watched my mum cry when the con man took everything. I pulled the paper notice from the envelope on my kitchen table. It had no stamp. It had been inside my locked mailbox anyway. The page smelled of cheap ink and damp. It claimed my mother had signed a new agreement last month. It included a copy of her signature. It looked like her hand, the loop of the M, the hard down stroke. It was impossible. Then I saw the fingerprint mark in the corner, pressed in gray powder like someone had dusted it for prints. I went to the folder where I kept the old court letters. I had not opened it in years. I had tried to bury it with her other things. I spread the old papers across the table. The names matched, the same lender, the same office address even though the building had been turned into apartments. The same collection agent name I remembered from my childhood, typed at the bottom in a clean font. Mr. Lorne. I felt that name move through my chest. It did not feel like memory. It felt like a hand. The phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown. I answered because I could not breathe until I did. A man spoke in a soft voice, slow and calm. He told me he handled my family account. He said the balance had grown. He said they would take my wages if I ignored it. I told him my mother was dead. I heard a small pause, like a smile. He said that did not change what she owed. Then he said my address out loud and the last 4 digits of my bank card. I hung up and locked the door even though it was already locked. I checked the chain. I checked the windows. My living room felt smaller. The debt felt present, like it had weight and breath. It was not only money. It was a thing that could come into my home without a key. I stared at the envelope again. A faint greasy mark sat on the flap like a thumb had pressed there for a long time. There was a knock, 3 taps spaced evenly. I did not move at first. The knock came again. I grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy flashlight, and opened the door a crack with the chain on. Bart stood in the hall. He looked older, thinner, and his eyes stayed too steady on mine. He held his hands where I could see them. He said my name once like he had been practicing it. Then he looked past me at the papers on my table and his mouth went tight. I did not ask how he found me. It felt like a stupid question in that moment. He stepped inside when I let him, and he did not look around like a guest. He looked around like someone checking for exits. He told me not to call the police about Eastbrook. He said Mr. Lorne used police reports like a map. I asked how he knew that. Bart said he had kept track of him since we were kids. He said he had watched the con man change names and offices, but never habits. Bart picked up the notice without asking. He did not flinch at the fake signature. He traced the lender line with a finger, careful not to touch the ink. He told me the paper was fresh. He said someone had printed it nearby, not mailed it. He said the fingerprint mark was not a mistake. It was a message. I asked what message. Bart looked at me and said he wanted you to touch it. He wanted you to know he could still reach you. My phone buzzed again. A new voicemail appeared without a missed call. The file timestamp showed 1 minute in the future, then corrected itself as I watched. I pressed play. There was breathing close to the mic. Then the same soft voice spoke, clear and pleased. He said, "Hello again, Eli." He used the name only my mum and Bart had called me as a child. Then he added, "Tell Bart I said thank you for the years of attention." Bart shut my curtains with both hands, fast and tight, like he feared someone could read our lips from the street. He unplugged my router and set it on the floor. Then he took my phone and slid it into the microwave. He did not turn it on. He just used it like a metal box. He told me the voicemail could have carried more than a voice. He said Mr. Lorne liked to leave doors open. He brought a plastic storage crate from the hall. I had not seen him carry it in. That scared me more than the voicemail. The lid was taped in 3 places. Bart cut the tape with a small knife and lifted it like he expected it to hiss. Inside were folders, old envelopes, a small recorder, and a folded road map marked with pen lines. The papers looked swollen, like they had been kept somewhere damp. The smell was sharp, like mold and ink. He placed a folder in front of me. The label said Eastbrook Private Finance, but it was not my mother's file. It was a stack of other names, dozens. Each one had a copy of an ID, a signature page, and a payment history that ended in disaster. Some of the names had red ink circles around the date of death. I stared at that part until my eyes burned. I realized he did not only steal from the living, he kept them as accounts. Bart set the recorder on the table. He pressed play. A man's voice filled my kitchen, calm, patient, warm in a way that felt fake. Then I heard my mother. Her voice sounded younger, but it still made my throat close. She asked him to slow down. She said she did not understand the terms. She said she felt sick. The man told her she only needed to trust him. He told her she was lucky he was helping her. I heard a pen scratch. I heard her breathe change, small and thin, like she tried not to cry while she signed. I pulled the recorder away from me. Bart did not stop it. He let the sound keep going. My mother started to cough. The man told her not to worry. It was normal. Stress did that. I remembered those weeks after the scam. She jumped at every phone ring. She stopped opening letters. She started sleeping with the lights on. Her hands shook when she tried to make tea. She became fragile in a way I could not fix, and I hated myself for how helpless I had felt. Bart turned the recorder off. He did it like a mercy, but his face did not soften. He opened another folder and slid photos across the table. A man stood outside a bank. A man walked into a real estate office. A man sat in a cafe with a laptop, his head turned away. In every picture, the posture stayed the same. The hands looked the same. The hair changed. The glasses changed. The name on the printed captions changed. Bart unfolded the road map. It was covered in lines and dates. He had drawn arrows between towns. He had marked places where people had lost money, then moved, then died. He tapped a spot near my city with his finger. He said Mr. Lorne lived close now, under a new identity. He said the current name was Paul Harker. He said he had a home office and a rented mailbox and a phone number that never stayed active for more than a week. I asked Bart how he got all of this. He did not answer directly. He said he had watched for years. He said he had learned the patterns. He said Mr. Lorne left the same scratches in the world each time and he could not stop himself. I asked why Bart cared. I asked why he came back now. Bart looked at me for a long time. His eyes were wet but steady. He said my mother was not the only person Mr. Lorne broke. He said he could not tell me the rest yet. He said if he told me, I would refuse to help or I would try to stop him. The way he said it made my stomach drop. It sounded like he already knew I would hate what came next. He reached into the crate again and took out a single sheet of paper inside a clear sleeve. It was blank except for a lender header at the top, Eastbrook Private Finance. My skin went cold. Bart placed it in front of me with a black ink pad and a pen. He spoke softly, like he was trying not to scare an animal. He said he needed one thing from me. He said I had to sign, in my own hand, and leave a clear thumbprint. He said I had to let Mr. Lorne believe I was ready to pay. He leaned closer and added that once my name touched that paper, there was no safe way back. Then he slid the ink pad toward my thumb and said, "Do it now, before he calls again." I signed the paper with my hand shaking, then pressed my thumb into the ink until it felt like my skin had changed sides. Bart sealed it in a new sleeve and wiped my thumb clean with a wet cloth that smelled like alcohol. He did not praise me. He just nodded once, like a gate had opened. An hour later we sat in a rented car on the edge of a town I had never visited, watching a small blue house at the end of a quiet street. The mailbox said Paul Harker in neat black letters. The yard looked plain. The curtains stayed half closed. Nothing about it looked like the life of a man who stole thousands, but the details did not match the simple place. A new security camera sat under the front gutter, pointed at the road. Another one watched the side gate. A dark SUV sat behind the house under a tarp. When the wind lifted the tarp for a second, I saw clean chrome wheels and a paint job that did not belong in that neighborhood. Bart watched through binoculars and kept notes on a small pad. He spoke in short lines. He said Harker never went to the same store 2 days in a row. He said he never used the same phone for more than a week. He said he never let anyone stand behind him in a line. I asked how he knew all of that. Bart did not look at me. He said he had been here before. He said he had waited for the right moment and my signed paper was part of it. At noon, Harker stepped outside. He looked like any middle-aged man, beige jacket, dark jeans, a hat pulled low. He carried a paper bag like he had bought lunch. Then he lifted his left hand to scratch his face and I saw the watch. It was heavy and bright. It caught the sun and flashed once like a signal. He walked to a small sedan parked in the driveway and drove away, slow and careful, like he expected eyes on him. We followed at a distance. Bart kept the car 2 turns behind, never close enough to feel bold. I watched Harker's brake lights. They came on too often, not for traffic. He checked mirrors more than he checked the road. Once he drifted into a side street and circled a block for no reason. He came back out and continued as if nothing happened. My mouth went dry. It felt like he was testing the air. He stopped at a coffee shop, stayed 3 minutes, then left with nothing in his hands. Bart said it was a habit, a quick stop to see faces, to see who watched. I kept my head down as Harker walked back to his sedan. For a moment his eyes turned toward our car. The look was flat and exact. It did not feel like a glance. It felt like a count. Next he drove to a self-storage place at the edge of town. The fence was high and topped with wire. A keypad gate opened after he typed a long code. We waited until a delivery van went in, then slipped through behind it. Bart parked in a row where we could see Harker without being seen. Harker got out and walked straight to one unit as if he never had to search. The roll-up door had 2 padlocks, both new. He unlocked them with slow care and looked over his shoulder before he touched the handle. He lifted the door only a foot. He did not open it wide. He slid his body under and disappeared inside, then pulled the door down again from within. I heard a second lock click, not the padlocks, an inner lock, something built into the door track. Bart's jaw tightened. He whispered that Harker used this place more than his house. He whispered that no one else ever went near that unit. We waited with the engine off. The air in the car turned stale. I listened for footsteps outside, for the scratch of a key, for any sound that meant we had been spotted. Then I heard something else. A dull thud from inside the unit, like a fist hitting metal. It came again, faster, followed by a thin, muffled sound that could not have been a tool or a box falling. Bart raised one finger to hush me, but his eyes widened. The sound came again, now clearly a voice trapped behind steel. A short cry, then a sharp slap, then silence. My stomach twisted so hard it hurt. I tasted acid in my throat. The unit door lifted a few inches. Light spilled out, then vanished as Harker stepped out. He carried a small cooler in one hand and a plastic bag in the other. The bag sagged heavy and left a dark, wet mark on the ground for a second before he wiped it with his shoe. He looked left and right, calm, like he had just checked his tires. Then he locked the unit again, both padlocks, and rested his palm on the metal door as if he listened to what was inside. Bart's voice came out low and rough. He said, this was why people stopped answering their phones. Then my own phone, still off and deep in my pocket, vibrated once with a new message that should not have been able to arrive. I pulled it out with shaking fingers and saw a photo of our rented car from behind, taken seconds ago, with one line under it. I see you, Eli. Bart did not panic when the message arrived. He deleted it and turned my phone off with a hard press of his thumb. He said Mr. Lorne wanted me to run. He said fear made people sloppy, and sloppy people signed more papers. He drove us out of town on back roads and stopped under an overpass where no houses faced us. He told me we could not watch from the street again. He said we had to enter the man's world the way he entered ours, through someone weak and close. That night Bart showed me a name I had not seen in his box, Denise Carr. He said she worked for Paul Harker as a part-time bookkeeper. He said she also handled errands that did not belong in any ledger. Bart had her schedule, her car plate, and a list of places she visited. The list included the self-storage, twice a week, always at dusk. Bart said she was the hinge. If he pushed the hinge, the door opened. We waited outside a small office building where Denise worked. Bart changed his clothes in the car. He looked like a quiet man with a clean job, plain shirt, simple jacket, no knife, no notes. He carried a thin folder and a business card he had printed with a fake name. He told me his cover once. He said he offered compliance help for small lenders. He said he could keep their paperwork safe, clean, and hard to trace. He said men like Harker did not want advice. They wanted someone who could make problems disappear. Denise came out at closing time, tired and distracted. Bart approached her with a polite smile that did not reach his eyes. I watched through the windshield with my hands clenched under my thighs. I saw him speak gently and show her the card. I saw her try to walk past him. Then he said something that made her stop and look at him again. Her face changed. Not fear yet, more like recognition of a threat she had expected one day. She got into her car and left. Bart came back 10 minutes later. He sat in the driver's seat and kept his voice low. He said she agreed to talk tomorrow. He said she asked who sent him. He said he replied with one word, Eastbrook. My stomach tightened at how easily he used the dead company like a key. The next evening Bart met Denise at a diner off the highway. I stayed in the car behind the building where I could see the back door. Bart wore a small earpiece that fed to my phone, so I heard parts of their talk through static. Denise sounded sharp and nervous. She said she did not know anything about loans. She said she only moved numbers where she was told. Bart told her he was not police. He told her he could protect her if she helped him. She laughed once bitter, and said nobody protected anyone from Paul. A third voice joined them. A man, not Harker but someone close. The voice sounded young and eager. He called Bart sir too quickly. He asked Bart if he wanted a job. He said Paul always needed men who understood privacy. My skin crawled at the way he said it, like privacy meant silence forever. Bart played along. He said he liked clean work. The man replied that nothing stayed clean, but it could be controlled. He told Bart to prove he could follow orders. He said there was a woman behind on payments, and she had started asking questions. He said Bart had to deliver a reminder. He described where she lived, and he described her child's school with casual detail that made my throat close. Bart asked what kind of reminder. The man said something that made her stop talking. He did not say money. He did not say paperwork. He said stop talking. I heard Bart breathe once, slow and measured. He said he understood. He said he could do it tonight. I nearly opened the car door to run inside and drag him out, but I stayed frozen because a part of me believed Bart had already decided, and my panic would only feed the trap. The man told Bart to come to Paul's house after. He said Paul wanted to meet the new help in person. He gave an address and a gate code. He said Paul liked men who did not flinch. Then the diner door opened and Bart stepped out alone, his face blank, his hands empty. He got into my car and whispered that he had what he needed. He said he had access now. He said he could enter the property without breaking in. His voice stayed calm, but his eyes looked far away, like he had walked into something deeper than he expected. When I reached into my glove box for the keys, my fingers touched an envelope that had not been there before. No stamp, no seal. My name sat on the front in neat black letters, the childhood name again, Eli. Inside was a single printed photo. It showed me in my kitchen holding the Eastbrook notice. In the corner of the frame behind my shoulder, Bart stood in the hallway watching me, and under the photo someone had typed one line. He does not tell UWHY. Bart drove us back to Paul Harker's street after midnight. The houses slept with dark windows, but Harker's place stayed alert. The camera lights were on. The curtains were still half closed. Bart used the gate code the young man had given him. The side gate clicked open like it had waited for him. I stayed in the car at first, hunched low, watching the front door. Bart wore thin gloves and carried a small tool bag that looked normal. He moved without haste. He walked like he belonged there. That scared me most. If he could look like staff, then the con man had done this for so long that it had become a home. Bart texted once. Come. He led me along the side wall where the cameras did not reach. He said he had checked the blind spots during daylight weeks ago. Weeks ago. The word sat heavy in my head. It meant he had planned this while I lived without knowing, while my mother's name stayed trapped in paper. He used a key on a back door. Inside, the air felt dry and cold like a room kept sealed. A faint, sweet smell hung there like old perfume. Bart said it covered other smells. He did not say which ones. We moved through a short hall into a small office. A desk sat under a lamp. Neat stacks of folders lined a shelf. Everything looked simple and careful, like a clean story made for strangers. Bart did not touch the folders. He went straight to the corner where a rug covered part of the floor. He lifted it and showed me a seam in the wood. 2 floorboards had faint wear on the edges from being lifted again and again. Bart took a flat tool from his bag and eased the boards up with slow pressure. The wood did not creak. Someone had oiled it. Under the boards was a hollow space lined with black plastic. The plastic was taped down in tight strips like a body wrap. Bart peeled the tape back. He did it with a steady hand, but his breathing changed. The smell rose at once. Metal, dust, something sour like a closed room where fear had lived. Sealed boxes filled the space. They were small, thick, and labeled in careful print. Some labels were names, some were only dates. One label made my throat lock. It was my mother's full name, spelled right, with the year she died written under it. Bart stared at that box for a long time, then looked away as if it burned his eyes. He opened another box first. Inside, gold lay in neat rows. Coins, chains, and small bars wrapped in thin paper. A few pieces still had price tags from shops, like trophies that had never been cleaned. The gold did not look like wealth. It looked like teeth. It looked like something taken from mouths. In the same box under the gold, I saw a bundle of documents tied with string. ID copies, loan forms, signed pages. Some had thumbprints in gray powder like my notice. Bart lifted one page and I saw a smear beside the print, as if someone had pressed too hard while crying. Bart set it back and closed his eyes for a second. He whispered that this was not savings. He said it was an altar. He said Harker did not trust banks and he did not trust partners. He trusted only what he could hide under his own floor. He said the boxes were not only money. They were proof, and they were leverage. If a victim fought back, he could show their signature and destroy them again. Bart pulled out a digital scale from his bag and a roll of fresh tape. He spoke faster, like the room pushed him. He said we could not take everything. He said Harker checked weight and seals, not every coin. He said the plan was a switch that looked the same. We would remove a measured amount from several boxes, replace it with matching weight, and reseal the plastic in the same pattern. He said it would buy time. Enough time to move value back to the families without Harker noticing in one clean hit. I asked how he would return it. Bart did not answer fully. He said he had channels. He said he had names and addresses and he had patience. He said he would send relief like it came from nowhere, because that was the only kind of help Harker could not threaten. He said if Harker knew where the money went, he would punish the people twice. Bart reached for my mother's box, then stopped. His hand hovered above the label. His face tightened like he fought a wave of pain. He said not yet. He said that box was the reason he had not acted sooner. He said it was tied to his real reason, and he still could not say it. He asked me to trust him one more night. A soft beep sounded from the hallway. Bart froze. He lifted his head toward the office door. Another beep followed, then the low hum of a keypad. Bart's eyes went wide with a kind of cold anger. He whispered that Harker never came home this early. He never broke his own pattern. Then the front door lock clicked, and a man's voice carried through the house, calm and close, as if he already knew where we stood. The voice moved closer through the hall. A key ring clinked once, slow, like the man wanted us to hear it. Bart grabbed my wrist and pulled me away from the open floor space. He pushed the rug back with his foot and dropped the boards into place without lining them up. The seam stayed crooked. My heart slammed so hard I thought the wood would shake. Bart shoved me into a narrow closet beside the office and stepped in after me. It smelled like shoe polish and dry paper. We stood pressed against hanging coats. I heard the office door open. Light spilled under the closet door in a thin line. Someone walked in and stopped. I heard a quiet inhale like a man smelling the room, then a soft laugh. He said, "You were always careless with corners." His voice sounded older than on the recording, but it carried the same gentle pressure. It sounded like a hand on the back of my neck. He moved around the office. A drawer slid open. A pen tapped the desk once. He hummed a few notes, almost bored. Then he said, "Eli, you did not bring the police." "Good." He said my name like he tasted it. Bart's fingers tightened around the tool bag handle. I thought he would rush out and attack. Instead, he lifted his mouth close to my ear and whispered that we needed one thing more. His eyes shifted to the desk, to the lower drawer. He mouthed the word ledger. The closet door did not have a lock. It had a simple latch from the outside. If Harker chose to open it, we were done. The idea sat in my head like a nail. I did not blink. Harker opened the small office safe behind a framed picture. I heard the wheel turn, then the soft click of metal. He took something out and set it on the desk. The sound was heavy, like a book with a hard cover. He flipped pages slowly. The paper made a dry whisper with each turn. I felt Bart shift, listening, counting steps. Harker spoke as if he was not alone. He said he loved order. He said people always broke in the same places. He said grief made them sign and shame made them quiet. He said he did not need to chase anyone. He just waited, and the debt walked back to him on its own. A phone vibrated, not mine. His. He answered without hurry. He said, "No, not tonight." He said the new one would pay soon. He said he already had the thumbprint. My stomach turned because I knew he meant mine. He said, "Yes, I will visit the storage tomorrow." He paused, listening, then added, "If the noise starts again, I will fix it." Noise, the muffled voice, the slap. My hands went numb. Bart moved. He did it on a breath, silent and sharp. He slid out of the closet like a shadow and dropped to a crouch behind the desk. I stayed frozen in the coats, afraid that even my eyes could make sound. I watched through the crack as Bart reached for the lower drawer. Harker turned another page in the book. He still talked on the phone. He said, "Tell Denise I liked her choice." He said, "And remind her what happens if she lies." Bart eased the drawer open 1 inch at a time. Inside, I saw a thick ledger with a black cover, wrapped in a plastic sleeve. Bart slid it out and tucked it under his arm. Then he opened the drawer wider and took a smaller item, a zip bag with tiny objects inside. He backed away, still low, and slipped into the closet with me again. The moment he shut the door, Harker's voice stopped. Silence filled the office like water rising. Harker said softly, "I heard that." My lungs locked. Bart held the ledger tight against his chest. He pressed the zip bag into my palm. I looked down and saw what was inside. A broken wedding band, a child's charm bracelet, a lock of hair tied with thread. Each one had a small paper tag with a name and date. One tag said my mother's name. Harker's footsteps approached the closet, slow, certain. He stopped right outside. I saw the shadow of his shoes under the door. Bart leaned close and whispered, "I set the trap before we came in." He said he had sent copies of the ledger pages to places Harker could not reach. He said he had moved money already. He said if we tried to stop now, Harker would erase the rest and start again somewhere else. Bart's voice shook for the first time when he added, "He will never stop unless he thinks he cannot win." The closet latch clicked from the outside, and the door began to open. The closet door opened 2 inches and stopped, held by Bart's foot from the inside. A strip of light cut across his face. I saw his jaw set hard. Harker's shadow filled the gap. He spoke gently, like he spoke to my mother on the recording. He said he had always liked closets. He said people hid in them because they wanted to stay children. Bart shoved the door wide and drove his shoulder into Harker's chest. I heard air leave a body in a short grunt. Bart pushed him back into the office and swung the door shut again, trapping him out. The handle rattled at once. Bart grabbed my wrist and pulled me through the hall fast and silent. The house felt awake now. A phone buzzed. A floorboard creaked. Somewhere a small alarm chirped once, then again. We reached the back door and Bart paused, listening. He opened it and shoved me out into the yard. Cold air hit my face like a slap. He led me along the fence line toward the gate. Behind us, the office door slammed open. Harker's voice rose for the first time. It was still controlled, but it carried anger. He called Bart by name. He did not call him a fake name. He called him Bart. Bart froze for half a second. His eyes flicked to me, then away. He pushed the gate open and dragged me into the street. We ran to the car and dropped into the seats. Bart started the engine on the first turn. As we pulled away, Harker stepped onto his porch in his hat and jacket, like a man leaving for work. He watched us go with a calm face that promised time. Bart drove without headlights until we hit the main road. My hands shook so badly that the zip bag of trophies clicked in my lap. I could not stop looking at my mother's name tag. I asked Bart why Harker knew his name. Bart kept his eyes on the road and said, because I was not new. He said, I was his first success. We stopped under the same overpass as before. Bart killed the engine and sat in the dark. He placed the ledger on the dash like it was a weapon. He took a breath that sounded broken. Then he told me the secret he had held since we were kids. He said it started in 1998 when he was 9. He said a man came to his house with a smile and a folder. The man used a different name then, but the voice was the same. Bart's mother had been sick and his father had been desperate. Bart said the man offered help with bills and medicine, then turned it into debt that grew like mold. He said his father tried to fight, then one night he drove his car into a river. Bart said the police called it an accident. Bart said it was a surrender. Bart's hands clenched around the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He said his mother did not last long after that. He said she stopped eating. She stopped speaking. She stared at the phone like it was a knife. Then he said the part that made my blood go cold. He said he had had a little sister. Her name was Anna. He said she had been 4 years old and liked to hide behind coats in closets. One afternoon she vanished from their yard. Bart said the man had appeared the day before and asked questions, polite questions, about where children played. Bart said he had told him without thinking, because he had wanted the man to leave. He said he had carried that guilt like a stone for 20 years. I tried to speak, but my mouth did not work. Bart stared ahead and said he found proof much later in pieces. A charm bracelet listed in a pawn record under a fake name. A photo of a storage unit logbook with a child's height marked on the wall. He said Harker did not only ruin families. He kept parts of them. He kept them close, like the gold under the floorboards. Bart turned to me then. His eyes looked hollow and wet. He said my mother had tried to help his family back then. He said she had lent his father money, and that was how Eastbrook noticed her. He said Harker had used my mother's kindness as a lead, and Bart had watched it happen and done nothing because he was a child and because he was afraid. He said he had promised himself he would not be afraid again. I asked him what the trap really was. Bart tapped the ledger. He said copies were already moving to journalists and victims. He said money was already returning in small amounts from clean accounts. He said Harker would feel it soon and start hunting the source. He said the switch under the floorboards had to happen next tonight, while Harker still believed he could control the story. Bart leaned closer and lowered his voice. He said he needed me to choose, right now. He said I could walk away and hide, and Harker would come for me anyway because my thumbprint was already his hook. Or I could stay loyal and help finish the switch, and we could take back enough to make Harker panic and make him make mistakes. Then Bart reached across the console and placed my mother's tagged trophy in my palm like an oath. He said, "Come back with me, Eli, or live the rest of your life waiting for his next letter. Which one did you pick?" I chose Bart, and the choice felt like stepping off a ledge. He did not thank me. He only started the car and drove back toward Harker Street with the headlights off until the last turn. He said Harker would watch roads, not backyards. He said Harker trusted his cameras too much, because he trusted fear to keep people away. We parked 2 blocks out and walked through dark yards, staying close to fences. Every dog bark in the distance made my muscles jump. Bart carried his tool bag and a flat bundle wrapped in cloth. He told me it was the decoy weight. He said it had to feel right in the hand. He said Harker checked with touch, not only with sight. At the side gate Bart paused and listened. The house stayed quiet. The porch light was off now, but one upstairs window glowed faintly. Bart entered the code again. The gate opened with the same soft click, like the house still accepted him. Inside, the air felt colder than before. I kept waiting for a voice from the hall. I kept waiting for the office door to swing open. Bart moved fast to the office and checked the rug seam with his fingers. He exhaled in a thin, sharp way when he felt the boards were still wrong. He said Harker had not fixed them. He said that meant Harker had been busy doing something else. Bart opened the floor again. The black plastic lay where we left it, but the tape edge had lifted a little, as if it had been peeled and pressed back down. I stared at it until my eyes hurt. Bart did not look surprised. He only said he checked. He did not stop us. He wanted to see what we took. That thought made my throat tighten. It meant we were not stealing in secret. We were performing for him. Bart set the scale beside the hollow. He opened a cloth bundle and showed me dense gray bars, cut clean and wrapped in thin gold foil at the edges. He said they were made to match weight and sound. He said if Harker bit them, he would know. But Harker would not bite. Harker would count and weigh and trust his own greed. We worked in silence. Bart lifted gold from 3 boxes, small amounts, never enough to leave a gap that the eye could catch. Each time he placed a piece into my hands, it felt warmer than it should have, like it had been held against skin. I slid the pieces into a lined bag Bart carried, then handed him a matching decoy bar. He weighed it and placed it back into the box with careful spacing, like he laid a body back into a grave. I tried not to look at my mother's labeled box, but the label pulled my eyes again and again. Bart did not open it. He avoided it like a live wire. He kept switching from other boxes, spreading the loss thin like a slow leak. A faint chirp sounded from the hall. Bart froze with a bar half placed. Another chirp followed, then a low buzz. My stomach dropped. Bart whispered that a camera had switched to night scan. He said it happened on a timer unless someone forced it. Footsteps sounded upstairs. Slow, measured, heel then toe. Someone walked from one room to another and stopped. A floorboard creaked above the office, and a soft scrape followed, like a chair leg dragged across wood. Bart's eyes locked on mine. He mouthed, "Keep going." My hands shook as I held the next piece of gold. The foil on the decoy bar made a faint crinkle when Bart adjusted it. The sound felt huge in the silence. I waited for a shout for the office door to slam open again. Instead, a low voice drifted from upstairs, speaking into a phone. I could not catch the words, but I heard the tone. Calm, controlled, a man enjoying time. Bart resealed the boxes. He smoothed the plastic lining and pressed the tape down in the same pattern we had found, even copying the small crease. He replaced the boards and matched the seam better than before. Then he placed the rug back and ran his palm over it, as if he erased our breath. We moved toward the back door and my foot brushed the edge of the desk chair. It shifted 1 inch and tapped the leg of the desk. The sound was small, but it cut through the house like a bell. The voice upstairs stopped at once. Then my phone, which should have been off, vibrated against my hip like a live thing waking up. A new message appeared on the dark screen without lighting it fully, as if it tried not to be seen. I pulled it out and saw one line, typed neat and calm. "You left the rug crooked, Eli." We escaped Harker's house through the back gate with my phone still buzzing like it had a pulse. Bart did not let me read the message again. He made me put the phone in his tool bag under a roll of tape, like he buried it. As we cut through yards toward the car, I heard a window slide open behind us. A faint click followed, like a camera changing angle, and I knew he watched our backs as we ran. Bart did not drive straight home. He took loops through empty streets and stopped twice to check if a car followed. Each time we paused, my mind filled with the storage unit door and the muffled voice inside. I kept thinking that Harker did not only want money back. He wanted the person who dared to touch his altar. Before dawn, Bart laid the bag of gold on my table and opened the ledger again. He pointed to lines where my mother's name appeared not once but 3 times under different file numbers. Each entry had a note beside it, written in small, neat letters. Soft target, family pressure, collect through son. I felt sick. It meant the debt had never died. It had only waited for me to grow into it. Bart said we could not sell the gold in any normal way. He said Harker tracked pawn shops and dealers. He said we would turn it into help without turning it into a trail. He already had a list of small steps, timed and scattered. He said we would clear the balance that used my mother's name, but not in one payment. He said we would also fund a clean account for me, under my real name, so I could not be forced back into Harker's grip by fear. I helped from the edge, as he promised. I did not meet anyone face to face. I did not touch my laptop. I wrote numbers down on paper while Bart used prepaid phones and public machines. He turned gold into money through people who asked no questions, then broke that money into smaller pieces. I watched him buy money orders with different names in different towns on different days. Each time he left, I feared he would not return, and I feared he would, because returning meant the hunt had not found him yet. Harker reacted faster than Bart expected. 2 days after the switch, Denise disappeared from her job. Her office number rang with no answer. Her car stayed parked behind her building with the driver door half shut, like she had stepped out for a second and never stepped back in. Bart stared at the photo he had taken of the car and said Harker had turned suspicion outward. He said Harker punished the weak first, to make the strong show themselves. That night my mailbox held another envelope with no stamp. Inside was a printed notice saying my wages would be seized within 10 days. The paper looked official, but the court seal was wrong in a way only someone who enjoyed lies would do. At the bottom was a line in smaller print. The payment location had changed. It listed a new address, a place I recognized from Bart's map. It was a trap dressed as paperwork. Bart told me Harker had tightened control of the house. New cameras appeared on the corners. A metal plate covered the office window from the inside. The self-storage unit gained a third padlock. Bart said Harker moved like a man who smelled smoke in his own walls. He said he would not stop until he found who had touched his floor. The hunting became personal. My phone received missed calls from numbers that vanished when I tried to check them. When I walked outside, a car sat at the end of my street with its engine running, then left when I looked at it too long. Once I found a thin line of gray powder on my door handle, like someone marked it for prints. Bart wiped it off and said Harker wanted my fear back where it belonged, inside my home. On the 7th day, Bart returned from a drop looking pale and silent. He told me one of the victim families had received an anonymous payment, and within hours someone had visited them, smiling, asking friendly questions about sudden good luck. Bart said Harker traced relief like blood scent. He did not just steal. He guarded the suffering he caused like property. That evening my phone rang from unknown again. I answered before I could stop myself. Harker's voice came through clear, calm, and close, like he stood in my kitchen. He said he admired the idea of replacing weight with weight. He said it showed care. Then he spoke one detail that made my stomach drop. He said, "You used foil on the edges, Eli. You thought my fingers would be lazy." He paused as if he listened to my breathing. Then he added, "I opened one box. I chose your mother's file first." Bart told me the call about my mother's file was not a mistake. He said Harker wanted me to picture his hands on her name. He said that was how the man fed. Then Bart opened his laptop for the first time in front of me, like a priest opening a forbidden book, and he showed me what he had set in motion before we ever stepped into that house. He had sent the ledger scans to a journalist who hunted fraud and missing people. He had sent the same pages to a tax office tip line, to a licensing board, and to 3 victim families who had never stopped looking. He had also mailed a sealed copy to a lawyer with instructions to release it if Bart vanished. He said Harker could scare one person into silence, but he could not scare a flood. The flood arrived fast. News posts appeared with blurred names, then full names. A man called Paul Harker became a man with old faces and new crimes. The quiet town began to talk. Cars parked near his house at odd hours. Neighbors filmed his porch. A delivery driver posted a video of Harker screaming at him through a crack in the door. The cameras on the corners did not look strong anymore. They looked like eyes that could not blink. Harker tightened his world until it was only locks and numbers. He stopped leaving for coffee. He stopped going to the bank. He visited the storage unit twice in one day. Bart said that meant he had started moving the trophies. He said the unit was the true heart, not the house. He said if we let him empty it, the worst proof would vanish with him. Bart lured him with a message Harker could not ignore. He used the same soft language Harker used on victims. He offered a trade. Return the stolen weight and the copies of the ledger would stop. It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie Harker respected. Bart chose the meeting place himself. The storage facility. Unit door. Midnight. I stayed in the car beyond the fence line, my hands locked on my knees. Bart walked in alone with a small bag, shoulders low, like a man coming to pay. I watched the lane through a gap in the gate. Harker arrived in the dark SUV, no tarp this time, and he moved like a person who had forgotten how to be human. He carried a pistol at his side like it was part of his hand. Harker spoke to Bart at the unit door. I could not hear words, but I saw the smile. It was the same smile from the old recording, the one that had pressed my mother into a corner without touching her. Harker unlocked the first padlock, then the second, then stopped. His head turned slightly like an animal catching scent. He looked toward the fence, toward where my car hid, and he smiled wider as if he had found the child behind the coats. The unit door rolled up and a light snapped on inside. For 1 second I saw what Bart had hinted at but never described. A mattress on the floor, a bucket, handcuffs bolted into the concrete, a wall with marks at different heights, measured with pen lines and names beside them. I saw a small bracelet on a shelf with a tag that said Anna. Harker's smile slipped, not because of shame, because he realized the light had not come from his own switch. Red and blue strobes flashed across the metal rows and voices shouted from both ends of the lane. Harker spun, lifting the gun, then froze when more lights hit him from behind. Bart stepped back without flinching. He looked empty, like he had already spent his fear years ago. Harker dropped to his knees, not in surrender but in calculation. He raised his hand slowly and kept talking, even as officers closed in. His mouth moved like it could still write contracts in the air. When they cuffed him, he turned his head toward Bart and mouthed something that made Bart's face crack for the first time. Bart did not chase him. He just stood and watched as the man was taken away. 2 weeks later, I received an official letter that said my mother's debt had been voided as fraud. The same letter restored her name in records that had been stained for years. Another envelope arrived from a victim's fund set up after the arrests, with a payment that covered what she had lost and what I had carried after her death. I took it to her grave and placed a clean stone marker I could finally afford. It felt like I had given her back a small part of the world. That night when the house was quiet, I found a new envelope in my locked mailbox with no stamp. Inside was a single strip of paper. It held a printed photo of Harker in a holding cell, smiling at the camera like it was a friend. Under it, one line waited for me in neat black letters. Accounts can close, Eli, but they can also transfer.